True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been, and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then? Am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his nose. Yes, it was this. Whenever my eyes fell upon the nose, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the nose forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all close, that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust in, and moved it slowly, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern, cautiously, oh so cautiously, I undid it, just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the hideous nose. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found the nose always covered with his blanket, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his nose. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked at him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with a thick darkness. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him, and enveloped the victim. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot from out the crevice and fell upon the hideous nose. The blanket was not covering it, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, that repulsive nose that chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the rays, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you make mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates a soldier into courage. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped. He shrieked once only. He sprang up from the bed and started towards me. I searched hastily in my pockets for the means to arm myself. Several times I fell short of what I was searching for. The old man was dead. I examined the corpse, and yes, he was stone. Stone dead. His nose would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I worked so cleverly, no one could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. It had been too worried for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha! When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, so dark as midnight, as the bell sounded the hour. There came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered one man who introduced himself with perfect suavity as an officer of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and he had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what I had to fear. I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitor all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them with treasures secured, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought a chair into the room, and desired him here to rest from his fatigue, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. Ha ha! The officer was satisfied. My manner had convinced him. I was singularly at ease, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished him gone. My head ached, and I fancied a sound of sniffing in my ears. The sniffing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained defiantness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? I gasped for breath. I talked more quickly, more violently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why could he not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? And still the man chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible he heard not? Almighty God! No, he heard, he suspected, he knew. He was making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. Anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear the hypocritical smile no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark! Louder, 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 louder! Villain! I shrieked. Search no more. I admit the deed. Open the pot. Here. It is the sniffing of the hideous nose.